So it's 7 o'clock.
Have a single one in the state of Vermont.
Anybody that wants to can call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Sorry, I should say
I'll
any
call the
board
meeting
meeting that wants
order
to.
at 7 o'clock. And I think we need to
On that.
select somebody to chair the meeting, right?
Yep. We don't have our chair, we don't have our vice chair, so we need to elect a chair pro tem.
What do you want to do it?
Nominations.
I nominate Len to chair the meeting.
Second.
Second from Bruce.
Smiling about it, I think he's ready.
Give him something to do.
Discussion? Any other nominations? All in favor? Okay. Len, are you abstaining? Okay. Okay, Len, you can pick us up on,
The pledge.
Pledge?
I can do that.
There's one in the hallway.
I just get a corner of it.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I did that right. So, yeah. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any additions, deletions? I would like to have an executive session. I think we can do it at the end. I think it'll be okay there.
I've got one, and this just popped up today. We should talk about, and maybe we put this on number 11, squeeze it in there. We need to identify a moderator for our annual meeting.
Ooh.
Person who did it last year, isn't it? Oh,
We can talk when we get there.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of moderator for the annual meeting.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Cindy. Discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Abstained? Public input and announcements.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I am Michael Fowler, and I was actually just at the previous discussion, the community outreach meeting, and right at the very end, something really struck me, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, let's make home ec great again, because we were discussing, all of the success that the shop class was having, and looking back at my time at Mill River myself, I really enjoyed home ec, and there is a tremendous amount of educational potential that kids can get from learning how to cook, learning how to use a needle and thread. And I think that those are actually vital skills that we as a community really should be giving our children the opportunity to learn. And so I would ask the board to invest some time and energy in actually looking into revitalizing some of these classes that fell to the wayside. And it was actually also small engine repair. These are things that I think there is an absolute niche that there are a lot of students would benefit greatly from. And it just came to mind just at the last meeting there that was very helpful and very insightful for me. And I just wanted to pass that on to the board to, as the year progresses, maybe keep that in the back of your mind or the front of your minds.
Can we respond to this? Because so in our finance meetings for this budget season, one of the things we talked about was bringing home ec back. And one of the things we asked the administration to do was to start seeing how viable it is for fitting into scheduling and stuff like that. So it's good to hear another, we need to hear more from the community that says to push them to keep doing that. So it is a ball has been started to try to get to there, and so hopefully by the next financial period of time, we'll have our ducks in a row, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that back.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I do have another public comment that was emailed to me,
Okay,
if we're good.
are you all
Yeah,
set? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ken Fredette, Wallingford resident, says, "Dear Superintendent Hill, I understand that Liz Filskov will be stepping away from her role as a Mill River Board member from Wallingford, possibly at tonight's meeting of the board at Wallingford Elementary School. While I had hoped to attend to express these thoughts to Liz in person, circumstances will not allow for that. Ergo, I will appreciate it if you would read into the record that I thank Liz for her years of service to the students, staff, administrators, parents, guardians, and all citizens of the Mill River community. I'm sure Mill River's loss will lead to gains for others elsewhere, wherever she goes. Best wishes to you, Liz, for a long and happy future. Keep shining your light."
When is her timeout?
We are going to deal with that later in the agenda tonight, actually.
Any other public comment or announcements? Okay. Any board discussion in terms of the announcements? Okay. So next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from January 3rd, 2024. So I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Thank you,
second it.
Thanks, Paul. Now we can have discussion. Any discussion about the minutes? Any changes? They were lengthy.
I have been quite thorough.
I think Rebecca does a great job of
Rebecca's doing
capturing.
it. I was just gonna,
Yep, yep.
that's where
You
I
know,
was
and-
going with it is.
And we've had that, I think, Josh, you brought that up before, and we've had that conversation in the past where some folks have said, well, you can read the minutes and you don't know half of what actually went on in the meeting.
Yeah.
So, from a open meeting transparency standpoint, great that
Yeah,
we're
so, thank you.
giving folks a lot. We have been talking about where's that balance of, we're capturing the essentials and not going too long. And I think we're doing a good job of getting there.
I agree.
But always welcome feedback there.
So, thank you once again. So, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes? Opposed? Thank you. Mr. Hall, you, sir, are up.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wallingford. Thank you for being here. Sorry, man. I need to scoot you out.
No?
I'm sorry to be on top of you all, but if I move any further, we get so small we probably can't see. So a little context for the presentation tonight. I know you've already been to Clarendon and seen a presentation from Jane Richards, but there was some discussion at a leadership team meeting about how we were going to do these board presentations. And like Jane, my offer to the staff here at Wallingford was that I was happy to come and present, and that I was also happy to have them send anything that they'd like me to present on their behalf. So I'm here. Joan Latuca, who's a member of our team, is also here in the audience. Hi, Joan. But that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about a school-wide thing that we're working on, and then we'll see some updates from some of our teachers. And before I start, I just want to say, I do believe there's good work going on here at Wallingford Elementary School, and as a member of our leadership team in this district, I think I could say with confidence that there's good work going on in all of our schools. And none of that work can happen without the work that you folks are doing. So thank you for your service to our students and our staff and our community. First thing I want to talk about a little bit, this is a new initiative here this year, which ties directly into one of my goals, which you see there on the left, which is the Lead with Vision. We're trying to coordinate efforts to implement a vision for the school. We're going to see defined results and goals that align with our district vision. and we're going to build a culture of high aspirations and achievement for every student. It was pretty clear when I took over here at Wallingford, the first thing to start with was to do a better job of collecting and tracking and using data, and especially around student behavior, which was something that when I got here and started, having interviews with all the members of our team here, was quite prevalent in those conversations. So we decided we were going to implement the first tier of PBIS, which is the school-wide, or tier 1, meaning for every student in the entire school. And PBIS, which stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, is often simplified down to rewarding good behavior. But I assure you there's a lot more to it. And we're focusing on the data piece, which I already mentioned, but also what we can do for all of our students to give them a better chance at showing up here at school every day and acting like students and following expectations. And then once we've laid that groundwork, then we can really start looking at how to push them academically. So tier 1, we started with some teacher strategies. This is a list of 4 specific things that we look for in our classrooms. We want to see positive greetings at the door. We want to make a connection with a student when they enter or re-enter our learning space. Specific prompts, so before we do anything, we want to give reminders of what the expectations are for that next activity. Trying to be a little bit more proactive. Opportunities to respond is really important. We call those OTRs. It's really important for engagement. We know that the more engaged a student is with whatever they're learning, that will be their focus rather than finding other ways to entertain themselves. And then being really specific with our feedback. The key in education, whatever you're trying to teach a young person, is to give them not only immediate feedback but specific feedback. And we talk about behavior-specific praise. We call that BSPs. So we really wanted to get better at when you see someone doing the right thing, making sure that we're acknowledging that in a way where that student, is encouraged to continue doing that, rather than just, correcting bad behavior all day long. So those are our 4 look-fors. The nice thing about those is, when Brian or Jody or someone else comes into our building and they're walking around in our classrooms and looking at what our teachers are doing, they can have those 4 things that they're thinking about, and they can give our teachers feedback on that as well. So that's been working pretty well. And that's kind of our tier 1 approach this year in the classroom. We've also formed a PBIS team here, and their goals for this year are we have to finish our PBIS handbook, which right now only includes tier 1 recommendations, and then we'll move into tier 2 and tier 3 interventions with that team in the future, so those students that need a little bit more support with positive behavior can get those things. And our final goal is to be reviewing data, some of that we're about to look at right now, and as a way to assign students to certain tiers and make database decisions to get them those supports. So just wanted to share a little bit about that. And so these are a few ways that we're breaking down our behavioral data. What you see here on the screen is anytime we have what's classified as a minor or major behavior, which is an unwanted behavior, that gets recorded. And this is showing, by date, how many of those behaviors we have in a certain day. So then we can pull these dates, look at day of the week, look at where we headed into a break, where we're coming back from a break, look at these days where we have larger numbers of incidents going on, and try to deduce from that information, what the reasoning might be school-wide that we had a tough day that day. We also break this down by time. So you can see there are a couple hot spots throughout the day. One of them being kind of, you see late morning being a major time where we experience behavior. It's generally when we're starting our academic day. We've got through morning meeting, and now we're trying to get into some content, and that can be tough for some young people, also right before lunch, just after lunch, and then right at the end of the day. So oftentimes we're looking at times of transition where we're seeing some unwanted behaviors more often. This is a breakdown by grade, so you can see, we're also looking at when we're making decisions around where we're going to put certain supports in terms of in which classroom, we can make those decisions based on, a chart like this where we're seeing, there are certainly some grades where we're experiencing a lot more behavioral issues than in others. By type, you can see this is majors versus minors. We would like this to be closer to 75% minor, and that can be due to a couple different factors. One of the things we're constantly looking at, because this is new, is are people recording these things correctly? So this is not necessarily to say we have more major behaviors in our school than we should. Certainly could mean that, but when you dive a little bit deeper, you can use, a pretty simple metric like this to go in and see that, there are some things being recorded as a major behavior that are probably more a minor behavior. And so we're able to look at not only the behaviors, but how we're responding to them and how we're documenting it. And then recently, you'll see here, we've got 294 responses. That would be every response we had so far this year when I pulled this data a little bit less than a week ago. And then we've recently added, as we meet with the PBIS team, we're always talking about, how we can take a closer look at our data that we're collecting. So we started actually tracking, these are all minor behaviors you see here on the right, but what specifically those behaviors are. And so a little while ago, we added that to our collection form, and now we're able to see, a breakdown of those minor behaviors. And as you can see, our biggest behavior we're seeing at the minor level is just defiance, disrespect, or noncompliance. That's often a student refusing to do work or refusing to follow expectations. After that, we've got physical contact, and then we go from there. So this is really good stuff to have when you're thinking about what types of interventions to be providing school-wide, because these are the places where we have the most common issues. So that's where we're at with PBIS. So I'm going to pause and ask for questions.
I have one.
Go for it.
I just clarification on that. I assume there are what was one of them? Physical contact?
Yes, physical contact.
Well, I mean, I could think of a lot of physical contact that would be a major behavior. So what is a minor behavior, physical contact?
Yeah, so physical contact is the minor behavior. Most minor behaviors have a major behavior is sort of related.
Okay.
The major behavior would be physical aggression.
Okay.
So if we have hands-on behavior and it's just inappropriate, we don't allow really any hands-on behavior in schools, right?
Okay.
But it wasn't done aggressively, or the perception of the person recording that behavior is not that it was intended to harm.
Okay.
That would be physical contact. Whereas physical aggression, where there is an intent to harm, that would be physical aggression. It would be recorded as a major.
Okay.
Great question.
Maybe the difference between horseplay and fighting.
Yep.
Horseplay,
Gotcha.
minor, fighting, major.
Yeah. And there are other things, where inappropriate language would be a minor. We have something called abusive language, which would be a major.
Okay.
So for just about any minor you see on here, there would be a major that's sort of in the same category, but is a more significant behavior. Any other questions on what we're doing with PBIS?
I appreciate taking data, because I think that's like one of the biggest ways you can start seeing what's happening. But I think, especially in our smaller schools, or just small schools in general, when you're measuring it, you're as the years go on, you'll be measuring particular students going through the system. So how are you going to measure whether or not the things are working, and not that kids are aging out? Or, do you have any idea of how that's going to go forward. I don't have an answer for it, so.
Yeah, and so that is tricky because of something I talked about earlier. Whereas anything we look at where we're looking at behavioral data, there's the behaviors themselves, but there's also the way we're recording them. So next year, if we have half as many write-ups, I would actually be really concerned about that, right? Because that probably doesn't mean we have half as many behaviors. That probably means we're not doing as great a job documenting. So something we would look for is, that major versus minor. That's a goal of ours, is to get to 75% minor, because that's going to tell us, the behaviors are what they're going to be, and hopefully we can positively influence them. But the first step, I think, is trying to get a lot of consistency in how we're documenting, and then we can trust that data to be able to say, okay, our intervention's working.
And that's something that, if you remember, when we looked at suspension data from the high school over the summer, we had a similar conversation around, well, if for a couple of years it's been like this, but all of a sudden we see more numbers, did we really see escalating behaviors, or are we actually following through with consequences more consistently?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it, but as we move into having a system for all three tiers, and we have students who we're placing in tier 2 and placing in tier 1, and we really start to hone in on that individual and the data we're getting from them, I think that's where we can start to answer the question, are our interventions working or not?
Because we know the kids, so we know the outliers.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I just personally from Tinmouth, I know that there were some years where Tinmouth was a harder school to be in, and then it got easier, not necessarily because things changed at the higher level.
I don't expect an answer, but I'll phrase the question anyways.
Sure.
Just because you're so new in collecting the data, because behaviors and emotions are contagious, do you see if you're having a bad day that more students are apt to engage in bad behavior? Or if you're having a good day, hey, more students are, hey, today's going to be a great day?
Yeah, I think, the very first piece of data I showed by date, I think you could attribute some of those to exactly what you're talking about, those sort of hotspot days. It's certainly harder for any individual to do a good job, to pay attention if there's somebody next to you not doing those things. And, that's where we hope, through improving things, for every student in school, we can avoid some of those bad days, as we've been calling them. But I do think that's very real, yes, certainly. These are good questions. We got any more? Ready to see what the teacher said? That's more exciting anyway. Okay. So I did send this slide deck out earlier because I have a lot here, and I don't want to keep you here all night. So I'm not going to read these all word for word, because that would make me a terrible presenter anyway. But we've got, Pre-K 1 wanted to share what they did with the gingerbread unit study. That was kind of a fun thing over the holidays. There were some really good learning targets woven in here. Number 1, working on positive relationships, which of course in pre-K is a really important lesson to learn. So they read Miss Stacy, who's in pre-K 1, has the world's largest collection of gingerbread man books. I don't think there's a gingerbread man story that she doesn't have in that classroom. And so they got to do all kinds of fun things. So you can see they're actually building a gingerbread house there on the left. And then on the right, they were practicing some counting with decorating gingerbread. This is also pre-K 1, so a lot of building going on in there, using magnet tiles, jingle bells, and tea lights. You can see the pictures of those things. And they build a bridge for the gingerbread person so that they could get away without getting eaten by the fox. So having fun, but also working on writing, math, and science skills. Still in pre-K 1, they got to vote, so they got some practice with democracy. On the favorite gingerbread story, and as I mentioned, there were many, many choices to choose from. Gingerbread Cowboy was the winner this year. And you can see the 5th grade buddies are in there. One of our pre-K class, they have 5th grade buddies, and then pre-K 2 has 6th grade buddies. So that's one of my favorite things going on in this school, which has been going on far longer than I've been here. The older students get a lot of opportunities throughout the day to go have a positive impact on our youngest students. Here's pre-K 2. You see there on the left, there's the 6th grade buddies in there, just having some fun creating. Every day they do a question of the day where they're working on literacy, developing community, and also fine motor skills, because they're writing with that expo marker on that whiteboard. And then on the right, this is a great picture, not only because you see 3 happy kids hugging, but also all 3 of those kids in that picture on the right are at least 2nd generation Mill River District students. So all of their parents, those 3 in that picture on the right, came through our schools, which is great. Got a lot from kindergarten. I'm gonna let you folks peruse this on your own when you get a chance. But a lot of talking here from Mrs. Merritt, our kindergarten teacher, about our new Bookworms curriculum, which has certainly been a huge undertaking. I will tell you that based on our STAR reading scores, we just did our winter STAR 360 and early literacy testing last week. Bookworms has been a good thing for us here based on those reading scores, so that's the good news. And we've got some great pictures of them down in kindergarten going through some of that Bookworms curriculum. You can see they've compiled a list of books that they love. Over here on the right, this is a student reading to the class from the Humpty Dumpty story. And more of the group reading there, those first 2 pictures. And then on the right, that's some word work that they do after they read. So they're sorting sounds. 2nd grade, working through the Bookworms. They've got a new smart TV in there, which the students are very excited about. It's been a great tool, particularly for that Bookworms curriculum. Part of our PBIS is that we are providing students with something called a positive PA, which is a little sheet of paper. Every time they're caught doing something sort of above and beyond as far as following expectations. And each classroom also has a certain number for the students in their school, in their class, where they're getting a classroom award for collecting those. So 2nd grade got a prize for earning 20 positive PAs, and they chose to go have a play date with the 1st grade, which was great. In 3rd grade, there's a lot going on. Shared reading, part of that Bookworms curriculum. They're also talking about the DI block here, which is a differentiated instruction block, part of that Bookworms curriculum where students are broken up based on reading skill and get to go through a little bit of small group instruction. In social studies, they did a trip around the world, and part of that was learning about how each different country that they went to, they had these little passports and they were stamping them and taking these sort of make-believe trips all around the world, and they were learning about all the different holidays that different countries and cultures celebrate. So that was a nice little incorporated lesson around diversity there in 3rd grade. They're also doing a lot of talking around empathy. So they went and visited Genesis, the nursing home, back in December, and sang songs and gave out some homemade gifts. And they adopted a few of the residents there with the help of some 3rd grade families and the teachers in the room. So they provided some books, socks, crossword puzzles, candy, things like that to those residents. So that was a really feel-good day for the 3rd grade. And this is all the pictures from the 3rd grade. So you see over here on the left, there's their passports. And just above, there's the 3rd graders with their passports. I don't remember exactly where they had just traveled to that day. But they had just got back from one of those imaginary trips. You can see some pictures of them singing at Genesis and giving out the homemade gifts. And then over here on the right, you're seeing those shared reading groups. And an update from physical education. Mr. K, our PE teacher, was actually here at the board meeting in the spring, and he had actually shared some of the data he talks about on this slide, where he'd been collecting his own data related to student behavior and the ability to work with classmates. So he's now taken this data he's collected, and he's using some targeted lessons around, social emotional skills, which, being someone with a sports and physical education background, I've always felt that that was a really special place to teach social emotional skills, and so it's really nice to see our PE teacher taking that and running with it. And if you get a chance, you can kind of look around the gym here on your way out, and you'll see there's quite a few prompts around statements we can make that make us a good teammate and things like that. So that's the update from PE, and I believe that's my last one. Any questions on any of those things? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I hope folks notice that we have incredibly hardworking teachers who are running with this new curriculum. It's one thing to say, here are resources. It's another for our folks to be working so hard to use those new programs. I hope you also see that we have a lot of teachers who are looking at data to figure out, what do our students really need? We're not telling you everything's peachy and everything's perfect. We're figuring out what we need to work on. We're trying to find resources and strategies to address those, and we're giving them a shot, so.
And hopefully, one of the things that I feel like, at least with the bookworms, is that it's actually working, and so it's a lot easier to buy in. I don't know about the other programs yet, but at least that one in particular, it seems like the teachers are in on it because it's.
And we had seen initial data from bookworms where we were doing some of those assignments in class, and you had teachers come and present, here's the work they're doing. What Phil was saying is that's translating to better literacy scores on STAR 360. So that's even a jump higher. The next jump higher would be the state level testing. I think it's still several years out before we could try and draw that connection, but I think it's good news that those initial results are turning into better results on our STAR 360 test too. So one more step along the way to really assess, is this working or not? Because if it's not working, we don't want to, it's a lot of work for our teachers. So if it's not working, we need to find a better way to do it, for sure.
Any other questions, comments? I'm going to move things along. Thanks, Phil, again. Appreciate it. School choice in and out numbers.
So school choice in and out numbers, we do this every year, and we typically set, I believe, 40 in and 40 out. We don't come close to that. We typically run maybe about between 10 and 15, and we tend to have about the same number of students in as we do have out, but annually we do bring that to the board and ask the board, what do we want to approve for those numbers? Last meeting, we did our tuition numbers, so right around this time of year, we jump in and do our choice numbers. Questions, I guess I would advise the board to stick with the numbers we've been using, because it hasn't been a problem for, the last decade. So I would make a recommendation that we make a motion to approve 40 in, 40 out.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Brian, what would be the negative of lowering that?
That is a fantastic question. The negative of lowering it or raising it. If we raise the number of students coming in, there can be a negative impact because we do not get funding for those students coming in. So that school choice in, because this only deals with high school, this is 9 through 12. So if we have a bunch of Rutland students, Otter Valley students, maybe coming in, we don't see funding that comes with them. So there's a negative to having your in number too high. There's really not the negatives to having our out number high, I think, are a little less concrete. It's harder to tie it to dollars, because if we have, say, 40 students go out, we don't lose funding for those 40 students. But you can make a pretty, I think, reasonable argument that what we can do as a school can be diminished if we have fewer kids. You know, there's something about having that critical mass of students for sports teams, students for the arts, you know. Kim tells us that we have pretty good participation numbers for athletics, but if we get a bunch of choice kids out, we might not be able to run teams. So the dollars stay, but there's something valuable about having a full building, if that makes sense.
And do you think that you weren't here, obviously, so you won't specifically, but was like that 40 number around when we had a higher high school population, and basically it's just been 40 every year?
I don't
you
know. I don't know that
Was
we've
it
ever
smaller than that, or?
had that many.
No, we never,
Sorry, I meant just the number that we allow, like what we're voting on. That's not necessarily that people are leaving that many, just like.
we never, I think it was decided upon and it just sort of worked. And so we've been doing the same thing.
And I think if the number's too low, you know, I think you miss out on some opportunity. If we're seeing that it tends to be about the same out and about the same in, then it kind of doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, if we had it at 15, say, we might be telling kids, no, sorry, you can't come here. You know, if it's at 40 and we're never getting close to 40, you know, we're pretty safe. We're never going to be turning kids away. But we're probably never going to be having so many kids come in that it's a financial burden to us.
So right now, the number is on average.
Yep.
15 to 18.
What I've seen is, it floats around there. Yep.
So to what Josh was just saying, it's been 40 forever, and nobody knows why it's 40.
No. If we saw something, Nick, like if we saw 30 kids in, 10 out, we might say, maybe we cap it at 20, because that's a financial problem. Does that make sense?
To what Paul's saying, is there any harm in us as a board saying,
Lowering it?
move the number to 30?
Yeah.
We've never hit 40. Is
Yeah.
there harm in saying
Yeah.
it should be 30?
I don't see any harm until we get close to hitting 30, you know? So if I were to project next year, I'd say it doesn't matter if you do 30 or 40. But
And we can
And then it
always
just
adjust
rolls
it
at
another
30
year
forever.
if we start pushing that number.
next January, we can do something different.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
10
we
years from
could-
now, somebody goes, how come it's 30?
Yeah, right, right.
Write your name in
So
there.
you could really do two things. You can leave it at 40 and wait to see if we have an issue next year. You could bring it to 30 and wait and see if we have an issue next year. I think either are reasonable.
Well, we already have a motion for 40,
You do.
and if it's not that big a deal, I'll rescind it if you know, we want my second.
I have no strong opinion.
Then let's see.
And last thing I'll throw in, this is a separate thing from tuition students, just to make that super clear. You know, our tuition students are coming from places that don't have a high school.
Right.
So those dollars do follow those kids, and that's where we have about 80 or so tuition students, I think, when we looked at that in the fall. So just worth noting, I think.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of setting the number at 40? Okay, thank
Excellent,
you.
thank you.
Next on the agenda is board goals review. And we have 4 goals, if you will, that will be student-focused, support staff, engage the community, and support safe and orderly facilities. And under each of those 4, excuse me, we have like 3 points that we make. No, I'm not sure if this was just to look at these. I mean, we have vision, mission, and values.
This was, when we set these, when I guess we as a board adopted them late summer, I guess, maybe August, we had decided that periodically throughout the year, we would come back and look at them and check in to see, make sure we're still doing what we need to be doing, if that makes sense. So this would be, I think the second review, the first review we did maybe in like October or so.
Yeah, and I think out of that meeting was when we were talking about communications, and we were saying,
Right.
making that be,
We were gonna check in on what community engagement was working on tonight, hoping we would be able to bring something to the board to be like, hey, we got this complete, and we can send it out, but
We're so
so
close.
close. Just not quite there yet.
thinking that maybe this is one of the process that we do, we say, we pick a focus of it, and so I would almost suggest that, Len, the ad hoc committee that you want to, when we're talking about that, we could try to see if that if we think that ties into supporting the staff in the sense of we are trying to actively engage with the staff to see how they're feeling, if there is something occurring.
Yep.
So I would say that ties into the board goal
Yep.
that, in
I agree.
that context.
And that's one of the things, and I was just looking at it, looking at recognition and appreciation. We can always, as a board, do more to recognize and show appreciation for the folks that are doing the hard work in the classrooms, in my mind.
Yeah. And something the board has done the last 2, maybe 3 years, is write those notes.
When do we do that, Brian?
No, that maybe's been 3 or 4 years now
Yeah.
that that's been happening,
We did
actually.
as a teacher
Yeah.
appreciation
Teacher
week.
Appreciation Week.
We've done it
Yep.
officially 2 times as the
Okay,
board.
okay, maybe just twice.
So this would be our 3rd year coming into that.
Okay.
When is that?
April?
I was going to say, it's before March, yeah, so May or April.
Well, I know, because
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Or
I
no,
think it
March or
might be-
April, yeah.
I think it might be April.
It's whenever
I'm trying to think,
teachers
because I came on in March,
appreciation.
and I wrote a bunch of them.
May, it is May.
Is it May?
It is May.
May.
Yeah, that's
Early
late, but
May?
it is May, yeah. So that's something that absolutely is coming down the road, and we can keep in our heads, if there's anything additional that you want to do.
Well,
yeah.
and I also, and I know we did it this year, but it was kind of small, is,
Oh, the new teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true,
and
that's true.
I,
Yep,
I don't know,
yeah.
I don't know if we want to, because someone mentioned something to me the other day about expanding that.
Yeah.
To not just the new teachers,
New staff.
but
New
also
everybody.
showing it to everybody.
Oh, okay. Just
Now,
do a.
I don't have a plan for that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
that was a comment that I heard
Yeah.
just yesterday, I think it
Yeah.
was. Because, I mean, it's nice that we're recognizing the new staff,
Yeah,
but,
yeah. What about everybody else?
yeah,
Yeah, I hear you.
and I can't say what we used to do, so I'll move along. Anything else under,
I.
I know, looking just at a high level, like strive to engage the community. We're working extremely diligently on the board newsletter. We have a student rep who joins us
Yep.
every month.
Yep.
And I've seen a number of us at the school events. And then the next bullet down, safe and orderly facilities, adopt a 5-year plan. They've been working on that.
yeah,
And something too, in the first one, continuously reviewing board policy, I feel like we have gotten into a pretty good cycle with policy. Absolutely. Just making sure we're, maybe not changing a lot, but at
Policy
least
committee's
reviewing
been
a
busy.
lot.
as you'll see tonight.
But in like 3 years, it's going to be smooth sailing.
Sure. Well, there were a lot of years where policies weren't really looked at. There were. So there are a lot of ones that since merger, right? Since
Oh,
merger
yeah.
haven't been, and that was 2016, so.
Yep. Yep.
um,
Okay. So I don't know if I don't think we need a motion of any sort. I just think we continue with what we have and
No. And I just think that's.
visit it.
Yeah. And I think that's just always a good pattern of, if we're going to set goals, Phil, near the front of his presentation, had goals up there. And the great thing about the goals that Phil had on his presentation, we met beginning of the year, and those were the goals that Phil set. And then the next faculty meeting he had, roughly the next one or two, he shared those with his staff, and now he's up here. So this idea that goals don't just get put on paper and go in the corner, because that's what we're supposed to do, write goals, but that we're always checking back in and going, hey, are we doing the things we actually committed to? I think a great pattern to be in.
And I also think the goals, I mean, we had a lot of goals that really didn't matter.
Yeah. They weren't the board's work.
No.
They were everybody else's
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, and so I think this works much better.
Yep. So all the more reason to keep
Yep.
looking at it. And I will keep recommending agenda building when we get there. I will keep bringing that up when we get a couple months back out. I'll recommend it going back on the agenda. So.
Any other discussion? Next is ad hoc committee discussion. And I guess since I was the one that wanted it on the agenda, as I said the last time we met, I feel, and again, this is me, but I think some other folks feel the same way, that there's been some issues going on that we don't really have a handle on.
Yeah. We've statistically, we've had more resignations than we normally would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think just looking at this fall,
Right.
if you look at last year, our numbers on turnover looked fantastic. But this fall, we do have this handful of resignations,
Yeah,
so it's
and-
worth
and
looking at.
I'm going to steal this from Nick. His suggestion is that we create a committee whose charge, because if we're going to create this ad hoc committee, we have to give it a charge. And we have to make sure that it reports back to us, so that it's not just sort of dangling out there. So that we create a committee whose charge is identifying the root cause of employee turnover and retentions with an emphasis on the special ed department. Because lately, it seems that's been, there's been a lot, and I'm not saying special educators, but paraeducators. It's hard to find paraeducators, and then we're losing them.
Yeah.
And so I think,
The only thing I'd say is, we really don't have paraeducators that aren't special ed anymore.
Okay.
That's really, so if we're losing, if we have paras that are leaving, it's,
that falls under the,
yeah,
Yeah.
that just is what it is.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to anything anybody else has to say. That's Nick's opinion, and
I was going to say, you took my words, so.
Last thing, and you mentioned this last time, Len, timeline. So your charge, your timeline, and reporting back.
yeah.
I don't think I would restrict it to the root cause. There could be more than one.
Yeah.
Cause,
I think
causes.
that's too specific in
Yeah.
the term, but right.
Well, yeah, because you could find that you have 2 folks who have a certain reason and 3 folks who have a totally different
Right,
reason.
absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think last meeting, we were talking about how to, identifying the trend. Maybe
Right.
there is a trend, maybe there's not a trend.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and here's the questions that I have with just like how it would work. Because you would have to be talking to teachers or ex-teachers. One, you have to get buy-in from, some of them we know will talk to us. Do you have to do some of that in just executive sessions, or, because it's hard to come back with,
Yeah.
and, because it'll still, the reality is most of it's going to be anecdotal, no matter what, right? So it's like, because it's not, you're just going to be talking to someone and it'll be their opinion, and then, But if you do that outside of a meeting and then come to a meeting and we talk about it, does that, I guess, what would you talk about in the meetings per se?
So I think you're going to always have to have that list of executive session stuff in front of you.
Yeah.
And you're always going to have to be thinking about, is this a conversation that needs to be an executive session? I think, if you're creating a committee, you're warning meetings. And,
Right.
like negotiations, we're going to warn a meeting and we might give a really quick update. But then once we dive into contract pieces, that's covered by that qualifies for
What side of the
executive
fence is it
session,
on?
so.
Yeah, and it's like, and people are going to be willing to talk in certain places and not others. And, so and maybe we have to have a motion actually before we're actually talking about it.
It wouldn't hurt to have a motion, actually. It wouldn't, but.
Is this, how does this fall outside of the charge of, like, the personnel committee?
Well,
You want
Do
me
we
to
have
read
any
the
other
charge?
committees that are focusing on this sort of thing yet?
And I don't think it falls under the personnel charge.
No.
I don't. Support the administration in the discharging of personnel functions. Purpose of the Personnel Committee is to oversee hiring, compensation, evaluation, and termination of personnel, and to provide recommendations to full board for approval. So I don't think it's in that scope.
Okay.
So does someone, because I don't think we're going to form this and put together what the charge is and what the timeline is and all of that tonight. I think what we can do, and if I remember correctly, the board chair was supposed to do something in terms of the ad hoc committee, whether the board chair was supposed to.
And I think that's, yeah, I think you're right. I think the way I read it is similar, that the chair appoints members.
Right.
So the chair is gonna look and try and figure out, okay, who's gonna be the membership of this committee. The language is funny, though, because and maybe next time we look at our bylaws, we think about changing this. I would kind of think the ad hoc committee would maybe write a charge and bring it to the board.
Right.
And have it approved.
Yeah.
The bylaws say ad hoc committees will be given a charge.
Well, see, I think because, I think to keep it neat and tidy, right?
Yeah.
When we make a vote to create an ad hoc committee,
It
it
has
has
to
to have a
have a purpose.
charge
It has to
at
have a
that
purpose.
time, right?
Because how do you approve a committee if you don't know what the
Right.
charge is yet?
And
Yeah.
so, if we're saying that the charge is maybe, not the root cause, but to find out potential causes for resignation, that's probably not the right way phrasing. And if we can get that, then, because does it say something about timeline?
Will be given a charge in a specific timeline. So I think the way the bylaws are written now, this group has to say, here's the charge, here's the timeline. Then I know, that seems harder to do.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But I don't see why there's not any reason that somebody can't, bring a proposal to the board. And
tonight.
you just can't, what you've got right there could be hash it out now and figure out what the charge is.
Right, and part of the problems with the past ad hoc committees, like when I joined, was that it really did seem like they potentially could go on forever. And so, and I'm a person who likes a deadline,
And
Right.
we
One
are.
of the main problems last time, it took forever to get it organized. I bet it took 6 to 8 weeks.
yeah,
Just to get it going,
right,
and that's not good.
right.
We are ahead of schedule. You have time. If you wanted to just take the draft and work on it, so that we could
It sounds good.
approve that committee tonight, not wait 2 weeks.
Right.
No, wait 3 weeks because we have a weird month.
It sounds good.
The highlighted section?
Let me, because we didn't like the word root cause, how about we create a committee whose charge is identifying the causes and trends of employee turnover and retention?
I think that's I think that's acceptable.
I like that.
And then I think the reality, like, if you don't say special ed in particular,
Right.
if you use that and you give yourself a very specific timeline, it
Yep.
means your scope can't get too big anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you will have to focus on amount of time if you say, we're going to do this in 6 months, 3 months? Like, what do we think is
This is January.
the appropriate timeline?
If you're,
6
year?
months brings us to the end of the year, the
Yeah.
school year.
I think we should have it by the end of the year.
You would hope so, right? Because it's, in this case, you'd think, especially if we're talking about like a very, like if we're saying within the past year,
Yep.
Yeah.
there's only so many people you can talk to,
And realistically,
you know?
if, I'm more with Josh. It should be 6 months, because most of the people you want to talk to, they're leaving now.
Right.
Right.
You know,
Right. And there's some,
how do you talk to somebody in November who left
Yeah.
in November?
good luck.
right.
Good luck.
And there's like some time delay of like, we're gonna have to ask them, what are the exact numbers? You have dates when the things actually occurred. And like that stuff takes time because it's not in their normal day-to-day stuff.
I do think, you
but
know,
so-
Len already has a really good handle, thinking about exit interviews of, you know, here are the folks over the, since the start of the year. You know, that would be easy for us to come up with that list of five people, maybe 6 people. Yep.
And we've got a couple more coming up.
Yeah. And some of those, I think we've done exit interviews. So we've already got a little information that the committee could
And I-
even start with. Yeah.
And I think, well, okay, let's back up. Would someone make a motion that we create a committee whose charge is identifying the causes and trends of employee turnover and retention?
I make that motion.
I will second it.
Thank you.
Literally.
Discussion? The only thing I'll add in the discussion is I also think we don't, if we see that there's causes and trends, then we need to be able to go back to the staff, not just the folks who are leaving.
Yeah.
But if there's a cause or a trend, or causes, specific causes or trends, then we need to go back and say, okay, this is what we're hearing.
You're going to want to ask questions of some other folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's people that are
So
not
that-
leaving.
That doesn't spell out, it doesn't spell out exit
time-
interview.
That's how the timeline grows then.
So do you think that, well, because you want to have a very specific thing, that you're going to look at this specific thing. If you find results, that maybe isn't part of that ad hoc committee anymore. Like you say, these are the things that we've found.
Okay.
Yep.
We come back here and we say,
And that becomes board.
how do we then deal with those things?
But I don't think
Right.
there's anything in that charge that limits the committee from saying like, oh, I want to talk to this supervisor, I want to talk to this colleague to get some extra information if they,
I think you have to talk to people that are still here. Like, you can't just talk to the people that are gone, right? Yeah, so,
Okay.
So 6 months is too short?
No.
I think you have to do it.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, I
School's
think,
going to be over in June.
I think
June it
anything,
is.
anything longer than 6 months and you're spending a lot of time to figure something out.
Right.
If there's a trend there and something we need to do about it, I'd like to figure that out sooner rather than later and do something
agree.
about it, you know? And this is just my advice.
January, February, March.
I don't think it's going to take 6 months.
I'd say 3 months. That would be my advice. This is not,
I mean,
you're
we
making
can
the
set a
decision.
timeline of 6 months, but that doesn't mean you can't have an answer in 3, right? I mean, you don't have to make
true.
it last 6 months,
When is,
just because.
when is most of the hiring done for next year's positions?
April.
I would
The
say,
beginning of next school year.
I would say April and May.
Yeah.
April and May, though the trend that we've seen a lot lately is challenges to fill positions, so we end up with all the August ones. We don't ever like to be there, so we'll end up posting in the spring. And, if all goes well, we're hiring people in April and May, absolutely.
Or
But yeah,
just-
we're going to
or
have
have
August
empty
positions.
It would be nice for us to have information by April then.
Yeah, when do intent notices go out?
Yeah.
That's going to be for, I believe, April 15 for teachers, and then it's going to be May 1st, I think, for support staff. Might be May 15, but for some reason, I think it doesn't follow and it's May 1st.
Okay.
So I guess I have a question just on the, like, so Andrea then will appoint people to this committee?
That's the
I
way,
don't-
that's the way the
That's the way it's
bylaws
stated.
read.
So
Yeah,
what I would
yeah.
suggest,
Yeah.
I want to be on.
what I would suggest is if anybody's interested on serving on the committee, that they let Andrea know. And then she can, because if
From
we
there.
form the ad hoc committee tonight, which we can do,
How many people? Are we just going to stick with our regular committee number
I
of
think
5?
5 makes,
so I would just say, if you're interested in serving on this committee, because it's another committee meeting, and keep that in mind. You know,
And I think we have to do 5 to follow our bylaws.
Okay.
yes. So what I would, okay, so we have a motion on the table to do this charge, form an ad hoc committee. Okay, any further discussion on forming the committee? And its charge? We're all okay with that? All those in favor? Okay. And then my suggestion would be, I'm not gonna make a motion, but my suggestion would be that if you are interested in serving on this committee, that you'd let Andrea know via email, so that, in fact, the committee, we don't have to wait another 2 weeks before we get the committee up and rolling. If we've got 5 members of the board who are willing to participate, then we should be good.
Can I make another motion?
You can do
You can make
anything
any
you
motion you want, Nick.
I'd like to make a motion that the newly formed ad hoc committee have a length of 5 months,
Max.
max.
I'll second that.
Cindy? Discussion?
That ends us in June.
Yep.
Why take longer than you need?
and there's not that mess at the end where,
Well, you're just not
It
going to
just
be able to
keeps
get
going.
in touch with people come
By then,
summertime.
summer starts.
Yeah, that's
and-
true. That's true.
I was going to say something about that, because we did something similar to this a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And some people don't want to talk to board members because the boards have a history of, shutting out teachers. They don't get enough money, they don't work hard enough, they get too much vacation, and it sort of turns them off. And they don't want to talk, there's no trust there. And so what you did, I think you were the chair last time.
Yeah.
And it's like we do with the exit interviews. They choose who they want to be there, who they're comfortable with. Like, if they don't know me, they may not, I don't want you on there.
Right.
So I don't know how you handle that.
Well, I think in terms of the exit interviews, I leave it open to them to, and I do that as chair of the personnel committee. So, Steve, you're right, that part of it is in reference to the personnel committee. But I think this is a bigger task than the personnel committee.
And we do exit interviews because it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't report back to the board on every exit interview. So I think that's a different, we might sit down and talk about the exit interview so that, if there are
We've
things.
done
if there-
exit
yeah,
interviews.
If there are problems we need to sort through, we can sort through those problems, but that doesn't generate a board report. So I think the ad hoc committee is a more formal. So I hear you, Bruce, that folks might go, I don't want to meet with that committee, but I think
But you have to start somewhere.
if it's the committee, you gotta, yeah.
And
It's different than the exit interview. Yeah.
I think that this board, it's a new board, and I think through our goals, we're trying to reach teachers on a different level. We're trying to show them that they're supported more, that we want to talk to them, we want to hear from them. I mean, I'm very vocal about it, and I talk to a lot of staff. So, I mean, I just think if we're asking them and reaching out to them and telling them, we're just here to help, we want to help you, we want this to be the place that you want to work.
All
They
you can
might
do
be
is try.
willing- Right, they might be willing.
Yep.
We can only try.
Is this something we can have principals circulate to the school staffs? Just that we're
I
looking
would,
for direct communication from teachers?
I would leave that up to the
Some of these
committee.
issues?
I would leave that up to the committee to kind of figure out who they want to solicit and how they want to solicit that, you know? Because, and
Anyone
if
in
the committee,
can send us emails, right?
oh, yeah, for sure, yeah, for sure.
But we can,
Well, and this will be, if we form this committee with this charge,
Yep.
that in fact becomes public. And so
Yep.
then you can use that to follow up and say,
Yep.
this is what we're looking for.
I'm just saying, just to get it on the radar of
Yep.
the teachers and the staff, that this is something that's happening, moving on.
If, if the committee were to say, hey, can you get this note to everybody on staff? We could get that note to everybody on staff. But yeah, I would wait for the committee to say, you know,
That's what they want.
how they want to solicit folks they want to talk to, because.
And the reality, the
You may not want to talk to 50 people,
yeah,
but you
and-
might have 50 people that want to talk to you, you know.
And that first meeting, like, should, by the end of that meeting, there basically should be a laid-out game plan of how it's gonna be done.
I agree.
You know?
Okay. Further discussion? I don't mean to be rude, but, all those in favor of the motion? Okay. Thank you. Next, board member resignation.
So we've got Liz's resignation that we did not act on at our last meeting, because Liz brought that up during other legal business end of the meeting. And we said, okay, we'll pause, we'll come to the next meeting and act on it then. I did reach out to Select Board Wallingford to let them know part of our conversation around how close this is to election. And, you know, while statute requires us to consult with them. So the goal was to reach out to them as soon as possible, you know, knowing that elections are coming and deadlines are coming. I didn't want to wait till tonight to talk to the Wallingford Select Board, in other words. So I reached out to them and let them know that we were going to have this on our agenda tonight, and that we had talked through a little bit that scenario of Liz being willing to fill her own, you know, be appointed back to the board just to fill out her time. But if we accept a resignation, we now have a vacancy, people can get signatures and they can run. And really what we want is the town to be able to vote and choose the next board member. We could go through this whole wonderful process of getting interested parties and appointing somebody for 2 meetings, you know, or we could appoint Liz to fill her own vacancy and then the election will.
Does this line item, does that,
No.
is that doesn't let us vote on it, right?
No, we would do that at our next meeting. This would only be creating the vacancy. So, but I did want to give the Wallingford Select Board as much of a heads up as possible. So I did share that note with them the day after our board meeting, after we had that conversation. So they're aware of our thinking already, if that makes sense, so.
Brian, I don't know if this is appropriate time
Yeah, Paul?
to bring it up. Last meeting, my term is expiring. I made a commitment to my wife when I did this in the first place.
Fair enough,
that I would not run again.
fair enough.
And I was going to say something last time, and then Liz
Stole your thunder.
blindsided me there.
Yeah,
There's another
Yeah.
Wallingford, but,
yeah.
you know, I don't intend to resign before, but
Oh.
I do not intend to run.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the
But your
public.
term is up.
Yeah, your term is up, so the public's aware of that.
okay.
So folks should be trying to run to fill that vacancy, hopefully,
Okay.
you know? Yeah.
Because she had a year left.
Yeah, she had,
She had a year
yeah.
left.
So you're safe and comfortable doing exactly what you're doing, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah. But good, I think, for the Wallingford community to know.
Yeah.
We need people. Out my direction, they struggle to fill board seats, and I think a lot of schools are in that position. We've been lucky we haven't struggled to fill board seats, but I think it's getting harder and harder.
And you can just tell everybody how much fun we have.
Yep.
So much fun. So much fun.
Way to sell it, Josh.
So do we need?
No, that's good to bring up, Paul. Thank you for.
So I'll make a motion to accept Liz's resignation. I wish her all the best in her endeavors. and I know she'll be missed.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I think Liz has
With
done,
regret.
yes. Liz has done a heck of a lot to pick up where Andy Richards Peel left off with finance, and, you know, big shoes to fill anyway, and I think Liz did a really good job of filling those shoes.
Outstanding.
And supporting us through. Stan's not here, but I think he would agree, one of the most challenging budget seasons we've had, just as far as the things that have been coming our way and the timing and how we've gotten things, you know, in barely enough time to try and sort through the implications and try and come up with a good plan. So, yeah, Liz will be greatly missed.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Now we go to committee
Well,
reports.
we added.
Oh,
Sorry.
moderator, I'm sorry.
Yep, all
Thank you,
good.
Brian.
So Rebecca was reaching out to our folks, our treasurer, moderator, clerk, because we're approaching our annual meeting, and we want to get our ducks in a row for the annual meeting, and we did hear back that the elected moderator from last year had, you know, things have come up, and she's no longer able to chair that meeting for us. So we have a need to fill a vacancy for a moderator.
What's the date?
You know, I think, I know we always like to be in a pattern of not taking, well, we can't take action. It wasn't on the agenda, so we don't even have to think about it. I think it would make sense for us to, at our next meeting, have an item on our agenda and accept the resignation of our moderator if there's a vacancy to be filled, because we had an elected moderator, you know, so I think we do need to deal with that officially. And then I think it would be good for us to have somebody in line to appoint. So we as the board has in statute the requirement to appoint a moderator if there isn't one.
What's the date of the annual meeting?
Annual meeting is the 22nd of February, is that right? That Thursday. So we need somebody from one of our towns who is willing to chair that meeting.
Yeah, that is the date.
So what I would ask is if there are any members of the board who have any leads on somebody who would be a good moderator, who would be willing and able, if you can chat with that person, and then I think reasonable to try and bring a name to our next board meeting so that we can accept a resignation and we can appoint.
Is there like a list of, like a description?
Duties of the moderator, yeah. So the moderator is really only involved in one thing, and that's chairing that annual meeting. So what Len is doing tonight with this meeting, just, you know, going through the agenda, you know, calling the question, following the process, that's what that person would do on the 22nd, and that's it.
And
So
that
it's-
would be provided for them as well.
Yeah, we already have our agenda.
Yeah.
And we even will sit down with them if they want to come in a week or two prior. We'll sit down with them, we'll go over the basics of Robert's rules, and we can support them a lot. Just somebody who's comfortable being, you know,
Up front.
in the middle of the table and doing the loud talking for the meeting. So that's all I had on that item. I just wanted to bring awareness to the board because that was something that.
You want to make sure
Andrea-
we put that on
Agenda building.
agenda building? All right, now that brings us to committee reports. Personnel, that would be me. I think we do have one thing for personnel, which is the hiring of a couple of coaches. If I could find it, it would be wonderful. There were two coaches, one
Do you want me to read it?
for third and fourth grade girls basketball as a volunteer, Shauna Parker, and then for middle school, eighth grade boys basketball, Kim Maneri. So I would make a motion that we hire Shauna Parker as the 3rd and 4th grade girls basketball volunteer coach.
Second.
Thank you, Josh. Discussion. All those in favor? And then the middle school 8th grade boys basketball, Kim Maneri. I'll make a motion for discussion purposes.
I'll second it.
I believe the reason Kim is stepping up for this program is because they don't have anybody.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. And I just want to get that out there.
Yeah,
so
make that clear.
Yeah.
And this is far later in the process than our other coaches.
Yeah.
And I think even the addition of the volunteer is because if this person is officially a volunteer, they can support the team better. I think they've been supporting the team for a while.
yeah.
When it's official, they can do more. So that's not even, I think, a late,
Have they had a coach for the last month or so?
for the 8th grade boys basketball.
Have they had games?
Kim's been doing it, though.
She's maybe been covering it, hoping for having a coach in place, but
But
we
it hasn't happened.
haven't been able to get somebody lined up.
Okay, just curious.
No, that's fine. That's the way things sort of work, is you got to have someone to cover it. And so, at this point, again, it's my understanding that
Yeah.
no one stepped up, so. In order to keep the program going, Kim's willing to step up. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Do you want to do that retirement? I know we don't officially have to,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, but if we want to share that publicly, I don't know.
Sure.
Okay.
We can do that. I mean, it's not on the agenda, but it does come under personnel.
Yeah, but I don't think there's action. Yeah. It's just more of an informational piece. Yeah.
So I'll read to you this letter from Maureen Fitzgerald Riker. I've decided to retire as principal of Tinmouth Mountain School. My final day of employment will be June 30th, 2024. This is also the closing date of my current employment contract. I wish the Mill River Board and the district leadership team success and goodwill in your efforts to advance educational opportunities for students and faculty, as well as create an environment where all children thrive. It's been a privilege to work alongside each of you over the past decade. Sincerely, Maureen. So as Brian said, we don't need to take any action. It's a retirement, so we don't have to accept, I guess we could deny her retirement if we wanted to.
I don't think that would work,
Yeah,
Len.
no, I don't either.
We've tried that before, and people still somehow
Yeah,
enjoy
somehow
their
that works.
retirements.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think it provides us an opportunity to look at what happens with this position.
And I think great to maybe get on the agenda for the next personnel meeting to start that conversation.
That means I gotta write that down.
Policy, you want to tackle that one, or you want me to?
Oh, do we want to get the date on the next one?
Mine,
Is it?
February 7th?
That sounds right.
Yeah. At 6,
Yep, 6 o'clock.
Great.
not 6:30.
Sorry, Nick.
It's all you, Nick. It's easier for you to read them off than I am, me.
I got them all.
There you go.
Well, it looks like they're all one, so I would like to make a motion to put up for a second reading, B1, B2, B4, and B5.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Cindy.
Discussion? No discussion. All those-
Just so that folks know, we're these, you can see they've been changed from D to B,
Yes,
and we're,
as part of our reorganization of all the policies.
so, we don't have any Bs anymore, but we now do.
And I think the B4 and the B5 are VSBA model policies.
Yes.
That we're replacing our old policies with.
Yeah.
But then the B1 and the B2 are not substantial, no changes, really, just renaming, yeah.
What we've tried to decide, just so the rest of the board knows, that in policy is, we look at our policy as it is, and then we look at the Vermont School Board Association policy and see if there's any major differences, and if there's not, and even if there's a small one, we tend to go with the VSBA, I think, just because.
In most all circumstances. There's been one or two where we found out that we like ours better.
Yeah, that's true.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? There you go. The ayes have it.
Yes, they do. Buildings and grounds. Timoth update.
We are currently working with the church to figure out the asbestos remediation plan. So they have what they need, and really it's a plan that needs to be in place first. The tile and the ceiling both need to be remediated, but that's something that doesn't necessarily have to be remediated immediately, but there does have to be a plan in place. So they have to do a little work to get that plan in place. The good news is that replacing the tile could take a long time. Getting a plan in place does not take nearly as much time. So actually, any of our schools, if we have asbestos anywhere in them, have a plan on file, a big notebook sitting in the office. And you hire a contractor, the contractor comes out, and they do the work of supporting you to build that plan. So they have the information they need to do that work, and my understanding is they are starting to engage with folks to do that work, if that makes sense. Questions on that?
So, in other words, there's no extra space in Tinmouth that we're,
Not right now. Yeah, not right now. Because we can't, and we had our Visbit, our insurance company came down and did a site visit. So Visbit gave us basically a punch list of these are the things that need to be in place for you to not be entering into, a liability. And I think asbestos is that's one that we're not gonna mess with. We need to have the things in place that need to be in place to be able to safely put staff and students in that building, so.
And I think there was people that are, they are construction people and stuff who are involved in the church, and they thought they could do it a certain way, and not coming up with the
Yeah.
idea that, oh, we're doing it for a school is,
Yeah.
there's different rules.
Yeah, for
And they didn't really tell anybody about it until late in the game that that's what they were going to do.
so my understanding is they're willing to engage to get a plan in place, so we're trying to work with them on that.
And we haven't had a meeting, and I don't think we have one scheduled yet, unless Matt did it with Tim, so I'm not sure. I haven't gotten an email about it.
It hasn't come up in talking with Tim, but what I can talk to Tim tomorrow, and I can maybe have Tim just reach out to the whole committee and see about setting up a meeting. I don't mind doing that.
Lovely.
Anything else for buildings and grounds?
Because there are a lot of things on the list. that
Oh,
we
there's a
wanna-
lot of, there's a lot of stuff that we need to bring to the board.
I can share this. The basketball safety apparatus should be completed as of this afternoon. They were working through that today. They were interrupted a little bit because we had a burnt popcorn fire drill, which staff and students did a phenomenal job of doing everything they were supposed to. And it happened during middle school lunch. And when we came back into the building, middle schoolers came back into the lunchroom and were very, very calm and doing exactly what they were supposed to, which was great to see.
Chilled out.
Yeah, they were. It was a cold day. Of course, the coldest day we've had so far. We're gonna have that. So they were making really good progress, and around maybe about 2 o'clock or so, they only had one left to do. So they were planning on finishing for the day. So just an update that project should be done.
Good. Thank you. Anything else, buildings and grounds? No. Okay. Community engagement.
We had a meeting tonight. We continue to make great progress on our first official newsletter. We are ever so close. We wanted to bring it to tonight's board meeting so that everybody else could review it and approve it for release out into the world, but we are not quite ready. We are very close. That's all I have to add. Next meeting is a month from today, which is the
February 21st.
February?
Yeah.
21, yep. Just keeping in mind that there's no regular board meeting that night. Doesn't mean you can't meet then. And that is the day before our annual meeting. So, just for context.
What time's the annual meeting?
Annual meeting is at 7 on the 22nd. Do you want to meet at 6 on the 22nd?
I like that better.
I
Yeah.
do too.
Yeah, you know, if you got to be
Correction,
there
it'll be
anyway.
the 22nd.
Okay, there you go.
Way to catch it.
We'll change it in my calendar right now.
Anything else from community engagement?
Nope.
Okay. Negotiations.
We did meet.
Yes.
We did meet. I think the public update that we can share is we met. We gave a brief update, then we went into executive session to discuss contract details.
Yep.
And things are moving along, and we have our next meeting with the union.
The 25th.
25th? Yep.
Of January, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Is it at 4?
Yes.
4.
Yes.
What time for?
4.
Yep. And there's not a need from the committee to meet again. Okay, so that's not a warned meeting, that's just us sitting down with the union, so if folks don't see an agenda posted for that, it's because the committee is not actually meeting.
Okay. Anything else for negotiations? Okay, that brings us to finance.
Who wants to read them?
You're so good at it.
I got them,
Brian.
I'll read them. I don't mind, yeah. And then we will need to authorize somebody to sign for the chair. So payroll warrants. For FY '24 regular payroll warrant in the amount of $588,390.84. Another regular payroll warrant in the amount of $6,939.23 for a total of $595,330.07. So a motion to approve that payroll warrant as read.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
No?
No
Discussion?
Oh,
Discussion.
I'm sorry.
Yours.
I forgot.
I'm trying not to take over.
No, that's fine. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
Then we've got from the general fund in the amount of $412,819.37. Another from the general fund, $14,361.02. After-school program in the amount of $1,366.02. Lunch program in the amount of $7,990.37 for a total of $436,536.78. Mill River Student Activity Account, the amount of $4,517.72. Shrewsbury Student Activity Account in the amount of $450.54. And then Wallingford Student Activity Account in the amount of $1,863. $2,000.00 for a total of $6,831.26. So a motion to approve those as presented?
We'll make that motion.
Discussion?
I just have a question. So when we are saying it's the student activities, like, is that like field trips? What
So-
what is that used for?
Great question. Student activities cover a lot of smaller items. So actually, sometimes a field trip could come out of student activities. We do have regular budget lines that do cover field trips too, though. So student activity account could be if there were a fundraiser that was done where we were collecting money. Maybe that fundraiser was to support a field trip, so we would pay for it out of there.
Okay.
Those are accounts where we typically collect money into those accounts. So that's why they're not general fund. So sometimes field trips, but not always field trips. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? There you have it. Thank you. Anything else in finance, Brian?
We do not have a next meeting. We're waiting to see how budget
Yep.
goes, town meeting day, and then we'll set a meeting date after that. We'll reorg and we'll have a new chair.
We need to make a motion to have somebody sign those, right?
Yeah,
Do we do that now?
Oh, you need a
well,
motion.
we're rolling right in to transact other legal business, so
Transact other legal business.
motion for somebody to sign this. Do we want to have our
Um,
chair pro tem
I'll make a motion to have Len, just because he's chair, I might as well.
sign on
Yep.
behalf of the board? Yep.
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor? And I'm going to abstain. Okay, we're good there? Agenda building.
So, we are going to be back at Mill River. We had postponed hearing from pre-K, and typically we do pre-K, intervention, and seclusion restraint in the same meeting, because those aren't the longest presentations. That's how we had grouped them in the past. If we want to do that, we don't have a school group set for our next meeting.
We don't have a what? I'm
A
sorry.
school group. We'd be back at Mill River, but we'd be doing that presentation. Let's see if there's anything else.
Whatever we talked about, we need to adding a board member.
Yep.
Was there another thing that we talked?
Board appointment. I can do another Tinmouth update.
We should have the ad hoc
I was gonna say
committee.
the ad
Yep.
hoc update.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can just put that under committees, and we'll keep that under committees as a running item in case there is a update, if that's reasonable. Let me look again. Wallingford. Yeah, that covers everything we.
The moderator, right? Do you
Oh,
have that?
yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I was finding it, I was searching for so long. I was like, where is it?
Yep. I think that gets us close to back on track with our schedule, close to up to date, and I think that actually makes a reasonably full meeting. Anything else we need on there? Good.
Okay, so that takes care of agenda building. Executive session, I would like to request an executive session. After we make a specific finding that premature public knowledge would place the board at a substantial disadvantage, and we would be discussing contracts. So I need a motion that premature public knowledge would place the board at a substantial disadvantage in reference to the contracts.
I'll make that motion.
Second it.
Too slow.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay, then we need a motion
To go into.
to
Yep.
go into executive session at,
8:34. I make the motion to go into executive session at 8:34.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor?